Rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Yo, set your affirmations, aspirations. I got shit to do, the aftermath of preparation. Good food, good mood, blood in circulation. One step at a time, yeah, that's how you make it. Set a goal you control and the steps you take them. I try to pick one thought, have some concentration. And if I make a mistake, it's called education. I try to do this every day, call it replication. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 So life ain't easy, yo, I think there's a reason though. Ups and downs, just like every different season, yo. Sometimes I'm high, other times I'm barely breathing, though. You always gotta fight and hide from the demons, yo. Negative thoughts are poison, they rot. Head full of flaws, so here come the clouds. They'll never stop unless I can swap all the bad for the good in my head when I'm lost. Yeah, so I'ma fake it till I make it. Positive thoughts are overtaken, I got patience. One day at a time is how you operate a cadence. A flow, you grow, you show yourself a foundation. Stay away from all the shit that causes temptation. I know that I like to do it cause it's sensation. I live my life in my head like a narration. Don't expect greatness, do my best, man, I'll take it. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. 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 Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.
Wake up, really gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
I'm changing who I am. I'm making a new plan, rearranging my life, and I won't look back ever again. Yeah, you ain't see me activated. You better hope that you never see me agitated. I think about my actions, plan them out, evaluated. That's how I end up on the top, man, I'm calculated. My mind's a weapon, my body is the engine. I'm never second guessing, I just do what I was destined. Cause I feel I got the blessing, persistence and obsession. That's how you keep progressing, I already learned that lesson, yeah. I'm changing who I am. I'm making a new plan, rearranging my life, and I won't look back ever again. You can't stop what's moving. You can't stop what's moving. I'm changing my life, and I won't look back ever again. No fear, see clear, you deserve to be great. I know it feels like things get in your way. Push through those walls and the others will fall. Sit up, stand tall, you can get through it all. I need some energy, anxiety's no friend to me. I have a short memory, I don't really remember things. That's how I move on, that's how I stay strong. A new day's on, I'll keep moving right along. And I feel like the pain in the past, it needs to stay in the past. You gotta take off the cast. I wanna feel like I'm a new person. I wanna have clear vision and purpose. changing my life, and I won't look back ever again.
Believed that those kids that were riding in that boat or their parents or their families. I didn't believe that any of the families, the people that were involved in the boat wreck, had anything to do with hurting Maggie and Paul.
Okay.
But I can tell you that at that time, and as I sit here today, that I believe that boat wreck is the reason why Paul and Maggie were killed.
Okay.
And I'm certain, I believe that.
It was random vigilantes. The 5'2" vigilantes, huh?
No, what I believe, Mr. Waters, is I believe that when Paul was charged criminally, there were so many leaks, half-truths, half reports, half statements, partial information, misrepresentations of Paul that ended up in the media all the time.
Good morning, y'all. Can you all hear me good? We're going to get into the sentencing. We're going to watch it. I'm probably going to back this up a little bit here. Let's see here. I think this is all old stuff. Can you hear? Okay, good, Frank. I just load. I got your load.
Thanks for joining us on Law and Crime. The sentencing hearing for convicted juror Alec Murdaugh is expected to happen very soon down in South Carolina. The disgraced former attorney was found guilty last night in the shooting deaths of his wife Maggie and son Paul. We expect to hear victim impact statements before Judge Newman hands down that sentence, which could be up to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While we wait to jump live, let's take a look back at some of the closing arguments, starting with the states. This is Prosecutor Creighton Waters.
No one knew who he was.
No one knew who this man was. He'd avoided accountability his whole life. He had relied on his family name. He had a powerful family. He carried a badge, used that authority. He lived a wealthy life. But now finally, he was facing complete ruin. His father, who he idolized, who I worked with on occasion, was dying. His son was facing charges for the boat case. He was facing a civil action that not only could potentially ruin him, but expose the reality of what he'd been doing for years. He had an opiate addiction. The entire illusion of his life was about to be altered. He couldn't live for that. He's the kind of person for which shame is an extraordinary provocation. Shame is an extraordinary provocation. His ego couldn't stand that, and he became a family annihilator. And I was thinking, that people who get the last word in this courtroom are y'all. And a lot of witnesses have testified over the last 6 weeks, but there's a couple that never get to testify that are important, and that's common sense and human nature. And there's 2 more that don't get to testify. We couldn't bring you any eyewitnesses because they were murdered. But common sense and human nature can speak on behalf of Maggie and Paul. When you look at this in its totality, common sense and human nature can speak for them. And they deserve a voice. Everything he did was meant to try to frustrate the forensics as a lawyer and a prosecutor with the 2 guns and the manufactured alibi, and not taking his phone down to the scene, deleting call logs, making short phone calls, bringing up the boat case, moving Maggie's phone, changing clothes, looking at Paul's phone, calling Rogan, or trying to call Rogan. One man controlled this crime initially, and that was Alec. But there were some things he couldn't control. And we brought those to you.
And throughout these closings, basically what Creighton Waters was trying to point out was that he had no problem lying to those close to him. And everything he did was for one person, the person he loved most and wanted to protect. And that was himself. Would you agree, Rich Schoenstein?
Oh, I totally agree. That was definitely the theme of the prosecution. I just want to take a second. I want to commend all of the lawyers in this case. That closing was great. The defense closings were great. The 4 prominent lawyers in this case were tremendous. They communicated to the jury. They struck a good balance between the data in the case and the emotion of the case. And they used both effectively. You know, only one side can win, but this was an outstanding work by some very good trial lawyers.
Well, as you just heard, Creighton Waters using the connection of common sense and nature. Casey, did that resonate with this jury?
Absolutely, because every juror wants to feel empowered, and he gave them that. And I was comparing the closing arguments with the defense and the prosecution. Now, the first half of the prosecution, closing arguments moved rather slowly, but it was the rebuttal that got me, because I'm looking at the defense attorney and he's reading from a script. He wasn't given that eye-to-eye connection, even if you would resonate with just one juror, hoping to get that hung jury, because for me, there was no way that I saw this would be a not guilty verdict. I was thinking either hung jury or, guilty verdict. But the closing argument for the defense, as he was reading, it just felt to me that he didn't believe in his case, and he was just trying the case and doing what he had to do. But that rebuttal by the prosecution, it spoke to the heart of the case. And he drove home the point that power and privilege will not prevail. And if all of these people who knew Alec Murdaugh all their lives and worked with this man day in and day out didn't know who he was, how are you, the jury, who only had the opportunity to view him and listen to his testimony for a day and a half, look beyond his lies? He lied to the people he loved most, and he's lying to you. Don't let him get away with it. And that message is what drove home the point. And I believe that was a swaying decision for the guilty verdict.
Very well said there, Casey. Now let's go to the defense closing argument, as you mentioned, when Jim Griffin speaks to all the questions about the night of the murders that haven't been answered yet.
In this case, on June 7th, 2021, Alec Murdaugh called 911, and Officer Deputy Green, and then followed by other deputies, rolled up on the scene. And he is standing on his property. His wife and son lie dead in a pool of blood each. He's within yards of him, and he just put a shotgun down. He just put a shotgun down. And what would that look like? 90 out of 100 cases when an officer rolls up, it would look like the person who had the shotgun and 2 dead bodies may have done it, probably have done it. Certainly is someone who should be strongly considered. And all the officers in this case told you that. Deputy Rutland said, yeah, Alec Murdaugh was a suspect, but there are a lot of suspects out. Everybody was a suspect. Fair enough.
Be seated.
Good morning. Parties ready to proceed?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Bench is ready, Your Honor.
All right, from the state, Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're obviously here in the sentencing for the state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh. Your Honor, I have prepared the sentencing sheets signed up. If I can hand those up to the clerk. Your Honor, very quickly, the defendant has no prior record, and the state has no victim impact people who want to speak at this time. But I will address the court briefly. And I don't need, Your Honor, to repeat the evidence that Your Honor just heard for the past 6 weeks, but it is overwhelming. And it shows this man to be a cunning manipulator, a man who placed himself above all others, including his family. A man who violated the trust of so many, including his friends, his family, his partners, his profession, but most of all, Maggie and Paul. This is a very complicated situation, and I want to offer my condolences to the family that has suffered here. We have tried very hard to be respectful and sensitive regardless of what position any person took, because this family has suffered and they've had to suffer in the public eye. And I want to offer my condolences to this family. I want to offer it for Maggie and Paul and Mr. Randolph too, who I had the pleasure of working with on one occasion. But the reality remains is that despite all this attention, this case is about Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh, and I'm so thankful that the jurors gave them a voice. You heard about Paul. Obviously, there was the boat case, but you also heard him described as a fun-loving young man, a person who loved life, a person who would do anything for his friends, for anyone. And he's cut down as he was just starting to live his life. You heard about Maggie. You heard how sweet she was. You heard that she was a girl's girl who adapted to the outdoorsman life of her sons, how much she loved her sister and her brother-in-law and their children. And she was cut down in the prime of her life. Both of them, like everyone else, was unaware of who he really was. No one who thought they knew this man, no one who thought they were close to this man knew who he really was. And Your Honor, that's chilling. And I've looked in his eyes, and he liked to stare me down as he would walk by me during this trial. And I could see the real Alex Murdaugh when he looked at me. The depravity, the callousness, the selfishness of these crimes are stunning. The lack of remorse and the effortless way in which he lies, including here sitting right over there in this witness stand. Your Honor, a man like that, a man like this man, should never be allowed to be among free law-abiding citizens again. And I would submit to you that the only just sentence here to give justice for Maggie and Paul is the maximum, and that would be 2 consecutive life sentences. Thank you, Your Honor.
You indicate that no victim would like to speak at this time. Would any victim like to speak at any time during these proceedings?
Your Honor, one of the things we did early on, obviously, as I just said, it's a very complicated situation, but we made the decision early on. We've had our victim advocate here who's been doing a wonderful job, regardless of the viewpoints of any individual family member, to provide aid and service to them. And we made that decision. I'm informed by our victim advocate that none of them wish to speak. The defense can certainly address that, but that's what I am informed. But they certainly were offered the opportunity as is required. And I want to commend our victim advocate on the excellent job she did in handling this complex situation that we wanted to be sensitive to, because again, none of us are not mindful of the fact of the suffering of this family.
I know SLED Chief Mark Keel is here. Would you like to address the court on any matters, Chief?
No, sir. Just to say, again, very proud of our agents' work they've done. I'm proud of the partnership that we've had with the Attorney General's office as we've had for many years. And again, we're here to see the justice is served, and we believe it has been.
Thank you. For the defense.
Your Honor, Mr. Griffin and I would have no comment. The defendant would like to address the court, though.
Mr. Murdaugh.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Paw Paw.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Sit down.
Yep.
Anything further?
I don't think further comment is necessary, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Murdaugh, if you'll come before the court for sentencing. This has been perhaps one of the most troubling cases, not just for me as a judge, for the state, for the defense team, but for all of the citizens in this community, all the citizens in this state, and as we have seen based on the media coverage throughout the nation. You have a wife who's been killed, murdered, a son savagely murdered, a lawyer, a person from a respected family who has controlled justice in this community for over a century, a person whose grandfather's portrait hang at the back of the courthouse that I had to have ordered removed in order to ensure that a fair trial was had by both the state and the defense. And I've sat through the trial. Not only have I sat through the trial, but also as the presiding judge of the state grand jury, sat through and participated in the issuance of search warrants of various sorts, bond hearings, and have had to consider many things. And we have this case, and I'm also assigned to preside over 99 others, at least 99 other cases. Though testimony has come up regarding many of those other cases, I will not make any comment with regard to any other pending matter, as I have been assigned those cases as well. It's also particularly troubling, Mr. Murdaugh, because as a member of the legal community and a well-known member of the legal community, You've practiced law before me, and we've seen each other at various occasions throughout the years. And it was especially heartbreaking for me to see you go in the media from being a grieving father who lost a wife and a son to being the person indicted and convicted of killing them. And you've engaged in such duplicitous conduct here in the courtroom, here on the witness stand, and as established by the testimony throughout the time leading from the time of the indictment and prior to the indictment throughout the trial to this moment in time. Certainly, you have no obligation to say anything other than saying not guilty. And obviously, as appeals are probably expected or absolutely expected, I would not expect a confession of any kind. In fact, as I've presided over murder cases over the past 22 years, I have yet to find a defendant who could go there, who could go back to that moment in time when they decided to pull the trigger or to otherwise murder someone. I have not been able to get anyone, any defendant, even those who have confessed to being guilty, to go back and explain to me what happened at that moment in time when they opted to pull the trigger, when they opted to commit the most heinous crimes known to man. In this case, qualifies under our death penalty statute based on the statutory aggravating circumstances of 2 or more people being murdered by the defendant by one act or pursuant to one scheme or course of conduct. I don't question at all the decision of the state not to pursue the death penalty. But as I sit here in this courtroom and look around the many portraits of judges and other court officials and reflect on the fact that over the past century, your family, including you, have been prosecuting people here in this courtroom, and many have received the death penalty, probably for lesser conduct. Remind me of the expression you gave on the witness stand. Was it tangled?
Tangled web, we weave.
Oh, what tangled web we weave. What did you mean by that?
Meant when I lied, I continue to lie.
And the question is, when will it end? When will it end? And it's ended already for the jury because they've concluded that you continued to lie and lied throughout your testimony. And perhaps with all the throng of people here, they, for the most part, all believe or 80, 90%, 99% believe that you continue to lie now when your statement of denial to the court. Perhaps you believe that it does not matter, that there's nothing that can mitigate a sentence given the crimes that were committed. You know, a notice of alibi was filed in this case by counsel in November, and we conducted a hearing, pretrial hearing, in which you claimed to have been someplace else at the time the crime was committed. Then, after all of the witnesses placed you at the scene of the crime, at the last minute, or last minutes or days, you switch courses and admitted to being there. And then that necessitated more lies and continued to lie. And I said, where will it end? It's already ended for many who have heard you and concluded that it'll never end. But within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
All day and every night.
Yeah, I'm sure. And they will continue to do so. And reflect on the last time they looked you in the eyes, as you looked the jury in the eyes. I don't know person who's always been such a gregarious, friendly person and cause life to be tangled in such a weave web, such a situation that yours have spun into. And it's so unfortunate because you had such a lovely family of such friendly people, and including you, and to go from that to this. You know, your license to practice law has been stripped away from you. You turned from lawyer to witness, and now have an opportunity to make your final appeal as an ex-lawyer. And it's almost, it's really surprising that you're waiving this right at this time. And if you have to do so, it's on you. You're not compelled to say anything, but you have the opportunity to do so.
And I tell you again, I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Paul.
Well, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become when you take 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 opioid pills. Maybe you become another person. I've seen that before. The person standing before me was not the person who committed the crime, though it's the same individual. We'll leave that at that. Before announcing sentence on these cases, with regard to all of the other pending cases, are any of them here in Colleton, or I'm sure some of them are?
Yes, sir.
Half of them, or
I don't have that in front of me, but there are a substantial number of charges here. There's some in Hampton, Orangeburg, Beaufort, Allendale. There may be others that I'm not thinking of right now.
We might have worn out our welcome here in Colleton.
Colleton's been great.
They have been, and I'll take this opportunity to thank Sheriff Hill and all of the court officials and really everyone I've met and dealt with while here in Colleton County. Just been great. But without any delay, we're going to schedule some of the other matters. I know Mr. Harpootlian's scheduling is complicated, and you've sacrificed quite a bit to be able to be here defending Mr. Murdaugh, as well as the Attorney General's office, with all the other many things and obligations you have. And to be able to have the Attorney General here, Alan Wilson, for the period of time that he's devoted to being here along with everyone else, it's been quite a sacrifice. But there are other victims whose cases deserve to be heard. And this case has jumped some of those other cases, perhaps jumped it because of this case resulting in an assault on the integrity of the judicial system in our state, law enforcement in our state. Even during this trial, the law enforcement have been maligned for the past 5 or 6 weeks by one who had access to the wheels of justice, to be able to deflect the investigation. And as the evidence is pointed out in this case, the looming storm that Mr. Waters talked about, I can just imagine on that day, June 7th, when a lawyer is confronted and confesses to having stolen over $500,000 from a client, and he has a tiger like Mark Tinsley on his tail pursuing discovery in the case involving the death of Mallory Beach, and having a father, for the most part, on his deathbed. I could imagine, or really can't imagine, but I know it had to have been quite a bit going through your mind on that day. But amazingly, to have you come and testify that it was just another ordinary day, that my wife and son and I were out just enjoying life. Not credible, not believable. You can convince yourself about it, but obviously you have the inability to convince anyone else about that. So if you made any such arguments as a lawyer, you would lose every case like that. Cases you will never have an opportunity to argue anymore, except perhaps your own as you sit in the Department of Corrections. Anything further?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for the term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh. whom you probably love so much, I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive. Under the statute involving possession of a weapon during a violent crime, there is no sentence where a life sentence is imposed on other indictments. That is the sentence of the court, and you are remanded to the State Department of Corrections. And officers may carry forth on the imposition. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before we adjourn, an order was issued concerning maintaining the juror's identity being anonymous. That order was issued, and for the most part, it's been complied with, except for the jury leaving the courtroom yesterday, or not the jury, but the defendant leaving the courtroom while the jury is still seated. Protecting the identity of the jurors is certainly extremely important during the course of a trial to ensure that no one makes contact with the jury or attempts to influence the jury. Jurors have a right to continue that privacy beyond their jury service, but they're not obligated to do so. And it would not surprise me if jurors choose to come forward and to speak, and they're encouraged to do so if that is their desire. I have no problem whatsoever with the jurors unmasking themselves and speaking freely with the media, because they have undergone a life-changing experience as it relates to many of them. And some of them are here now, and I want them to know that should anyone attempt to harass them or annoy them, please let me know and I will address the issue. Secondly, there's a complaint now regarding the posting of autopsy photographs or photos that came from within the courtroom. It's based on the direction of the photographs. It did not come from the audience, came somehow from within the well of the court. The parties have requested an investigation of that. I have my hands full doing my job, and I don't attempt to conduct any investigations beyond the conducting of a trial, but to the extent that law enforcement decides to review that, it would be the responsibility of law enforcement. Yes. And of course, one of the reasons we've sought to seal graphic photos is because the parties have a right to privacy and a right to those matters not being publicly disclosed. If anyone has heard about the recent settlement that Kobe Bryant's, another sports analogy, Kobe Bryant's wife just made with Los Angeles County and others out there over certain disclosures of information involving the death of Kobe Bryant, liability can be substantial, and it's a risk for the most part that's not worth taking. So we'll let everyone judge themselves accordingly with that regard. Aside from all that, our business is done here in Colleton County, and I get to use my gavel one or few times during this trial and order that court be adjourned. Sine die.
All rise.
sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for a term of the rest of your natural life.
And that just happened moments ago. Convicted murderer and former attorney Alec Murdaugh was sentenced to life in prison this morning. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Yu. Thanks for joining us. This came after the guilty verdict was reached last night by a Walterboro jury who are convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Murdaugh killed his wife, Maggie, and son, Paul, back on June 7th of 2021. Before I bring my legal panel to chat about all of this, let's hear some of what Judge Newman had to say to Alec Murdaugh himself this morning before handing down his sentence.
The notice of alibi was filed in this case by counsel in November, and we conducted a hearing, a pretrial hearing, in which
Can you all hear me now? Can't get I've been sitting here talking and I can't get it to work, my sound for me to talk to you all. Okay, good. I couldn't get it to freaking work. I think, Jada, what you said about the two guns, that kind of throws me off because I don't know. I feel like somebody else was there and I don't know. It's weird.
you claim to have been someplace else at the time the crime was committed. Then, after all of the witnesses placed you at the scene of the crime, at the last minute, or last minutes or days, you switch courses and admitted to being there. And then that necessitated more lies and continued to lie. And I said, where will it end? It's already ended for many who have heard you and concluded that it'll never end. But within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
All day and every night.
Yeah, I'm sure. And they will continue to do so. And reflect on the last time they looked you in the eyes, as you looked the jury in the eyes. I don't know person who's always been such a gregarious, friendly person can cause your life to be tangled in such a weave web, such a situation that yours have spun into. And it's so unfortunate because you had such a lovely family of such friendly people, including you, and to go from that to this.
And with that, I'm joined live by South Carolina local and law and crime correspondent Gigi McKelvey, who has been covering this trial for us from day one. Gigi, you were just in that courtroom for that verdict. It gave me goosebumps watching it in the studio here. What was it like in the courtroom? What did you see?
It was a very, very heavy air in there. We were sitting on the front row, just kind of diagonal from the family, and we're able to watch their expressions, mostly emotionless as far as no tears. His sister sometimes shaking her head in disagreement with the judge when he was talking to Alec, but very powerful things in a respectful way to me from Judge Newman to Alec, who it almost was like, if that's going to make you, if anything is going to make Alec Murdaugh feel bad, it's the gentle way that he essentially told Alec, you are a liar and you continue to lie. And really powerful when he said, it might not have been you, it could be the monster you've become. And we all kind of, you could hear the air leave the room when he said that.
Were you surprised at all? Was the room surprised at all that Alec Murdaugh had something to say? And when he did have something to say, I got to be honest, he didn't sound very convincing, saying he was sorry.
No, and I don't think Judge Newman bought it either. And I guess that's what you have to say. He just doesn't want to be known as a wife and a son murderer. It's not what you want to go into prison with that on your back. I think, you know, you make your bed, you lay in it. But we all expected him to maintain his innocence, and he did twice. So I guess that's the last we'll hear from him on this criminal case. But goodness, I mean, like Judge Newman said, he's got over 90 cases pending with Alec Murdaugh.
Well, Gigi, we saw Buster Murdaugh, we saw John Marvin, we saw a lot of the family of Alec Murdaugh in that courtroom. When you saw them, what was their facial expression as they saw all of this go down?
Yeah, they're just very solemn, stoic at times. Did see a little bit of emotion creep out, you know, just nothing in a big way. But mainly the big thing was his sister, who was shaking her head several times when the judge was talking to Alec, shaking her head in disagreement that clearly she did not agree with what he was saying. I feel like, you know, they've been here every day. His sister's been, I don't think there's been a day she's missed. So it kind of lends the idea that she believes in Alec himself, that he did not murder Maggie and Paul. And, you know, I guess that's what families do sometimes. But you have to wonder, what have they learned sitting there every day in this trial that they didn't know coming in? Sure, there's a lot of issues that they're going to have to deal with for the rest of their life.
Judge Newman has really become a star in this case, very profound, like the Zen master of all judges here, especially what he had to say. What really connected with me was he said, well, maybe it wasn't you who did it. It was the monster in you who did it. It was all that opioid addiction that caused you to be a different person. Then he handed down the life sentence, the consecutive life sentences for Alec Murdaugh. What were you surprised?
No, I mean, a double murder, it's in South Carolina, anytime you have a double murder, it's probably going to be life in prison. I didn't expect it to be any different from him. He's never getting out, obviously, now we know for sure, but there's so much surrounding this guy, and I'm not going to be surprised if so much more over the course of months or years is revealed about past crimes that he committed that have yet to be discovered.
Well, we saw a very different looking Alec Murdaugh this morning. He was in that orange jumpsuit. He had flip-flops on as you're taking a look at that video right now. When you think about what happened between last night and now, Gigi, take us through what this past 16 hours have been like.
It's been a wild ride. You know, we were not expecting a verdict necessarily, but we got rumblings. We all ran to the courthouse. Every person that came inside that courtroom was breathing heavy because it was so last minute, wanted to get in. And then just the guilty verdict, when it was read, it was very surreal. Even though, you know, people have been divided here. Honestly, there's been a lot of people who thought this would be a hung jury. And in fact, a couple of jurors were in the beginning, more on the not guilty side, took about 45 minutes to convince those two that he was guilty. And you had that reading. It was hard to watch the family, Buster especially. He took it very hard when Alec turned around, looked at him, and said, "It's okay, I love you." That was when Alec immediately teared up, got the red face, connected eyes, the emotion started. Buster kind of looked down after that. And so it's been a roller coaster, a little bit of relief.
Yeah, I do feel bad for Buster, but I think Alex is protecting him. I feel bad for Alex too. I do. I have sympathy for him, and I don't know why. Yeah, she didn't even look at the video. Jada, she said in the orange jumpsuit. Where the fuck do you see an orange jumpsuit? I see a tan or brown. No, not orange. Yeah, I think a lot more is going to come out on this case. A lot more. I'm just going to stream this just for a few more minutes, and we're going to jump over to day 7 of the trial.
A little bit of feeling bad for people, for the family, and then the families that weren't in that courtroom, people that have been affected by Alec who have not had their day in court, all these financial victims. There's so much more to come with this man.
Yeah, and we did see Alec Murdaugh walk out of that courtroom. It was a tan jumpsuit. Wasn't so orange as we all expected. It was a tan jumpsuit. I want to clarify that. Gigi, thank you so much for all your great reporting. I'm sure we will hear more from you from the rest of the day. I know you have a lot to do now, so thank you so much. We'll hear from you soon. We do have to take a quick break here on Law and Crime. So much more to discuss about the sentencing hearing that we just saw. Stay with us.
Okay, do y'all want to hear the rest of this? It's probably going to be just them talking about it. Yeah, she finally said orange. I mean tan instead of orange. I think I'm going to end this one and jump over to my other one, and there's really not much more on this. I just never seen one be over this quick, except for Chris Watts, but he didn't even go to trial, did he? No. All right, I'll see you all over on the next one in about 15 minutes. Y'all know me, it might be 20. I love you all, though. Thank you for coming. It was kind of nice getting up early and getting started. Usually my medicine makes me sleep forever. But see you all in a few. Love you all. Adios. Take care, Jada. Have a good day. Love you. Nana, it's so good to see you. I've missed you. Yeah, I'm over here on my backup channel. I'm going to work on building it up some. And I've been wanting to stream this trial, so I've been focusing on that. And I ain't done nothing on my main channel. Kind of burnt out with YouTube, you know. Ditto. I love that, Nana. See you all in a few minutes. Adios, amigos.